Thank you, Mary. As she said, my name is Travis Windsor, Director of Architecture and Engineering, and I am what stands between you and drinks. But with that, I am grateful that you have all come to attend the session today and learn a little bit more about what we're going to be doing on our technology platform. So a little bit of context. So Moodle's technology platform hasn't evolved a lot in the last 20 years. It's essentially a very similar proposition to what it was. It's grown, the community has grown, we can do lots of fantastic things on there, but there hasn't been a huge evolution. And it's starting to cause a few issues, and that's why we're looking into this. So there has been, I've heard anecdotally, reduction in the contributors, the number of contributors. It's getting harder for HQ and partners to start to hire the right skills. Technical debt is becoming a real barrier for people to contribute to the code. It's either preventing or it's just making it harder to work within, slowing down feature improvements. The platform can be fragile. And that's why a lot of you in this room have probably got processes and steps in place, how you manage your upgrades. And it becomes an actual investment for you all to engage with that. And we want to make it easier to engage with advances in new technologies. I've already heard this conference so far, lots of the really cool things that are happening. So it's not like it's not possible, but we want to make it easier. And so the aim is to try and take our beloved Moodle and make it a little bit more modern and ready for the future. I need to come up with a name for him, but I'll have to keep thinking on that. All right, so to start with, it would be really easy for me just to jump into our Jira backlog and just find stuff and get cracking on things. But I think that'll make some difference, but I really want to make sure that we're shifting the needle. I want to make sure that we're providing ourselves a really solid foundation. We're not just making change for change's sake, we're actually giving ourselves really good outcomes and driving business value for everyone. So I had set up having conversations with lots of stakeholders, internally, across all over the organisation, externally, especially with a lot of partners in the community, learning and asking them lots of questions about their experience with the platform, talking about the strengths, talking about the pain points, what the opportunities are to improve, the aspirations, results and what they think good looks like. And I want to map that through to some things that we can use as that foundation, principles that can guide our decision making, outcomes that we can focus on and ground all of our changes in, and how we want to start demonstrating that progress. So here's the guiding principles. I'm not going to take you through all the data about those conversations. I'm going to try and keep that simple and then get into more of the technical stuff. But to take you very quickly through the principles. Number one, I want to stay open source. It's really important to the whole community that these changes are going to be to the benefit of everyone. So we are really committed to making sure that all of these transformative changes that we do are actually going to be and stay open source. We want to enable the community and the partners to contribute towards this transformation. This isn't just something that me and my team are going to look after or just a little side project for HQ. This is something we want the whole community to be a part of. We want to make sure we're providing exemplar solutions and actually getting on board as much engagement as possible. We want to keep flexibility front of mind. It's so much of a part of the DNA of Moodle that as we look and we are making decisions, we have to ensure that flexibility stays there. There's going to be some interesting choices because Moodle is some ways possibly a little too flexible or too open with things that it can do. But as we're looking and making certain choices, we want to keep the need for flexibility front of our mind. We want to ensure that there's no going backwards on our investments and accessibility in security and privacy. Any change that we do can't take us backwards. We want to make sure that we're transparent on all of our changes, engaging with the community so there's no surprises. We're not going to operate in the shadows. We want to make sure that whatever changes are happening, we're engaging, there's a clear pattern, and we are engaging and working with the whole community. And lastly, we want to make sure there's a reasonable upgrade, migration path at every point. No soldier left behind. If we're going to make sure that this is the benefit of the whole community, we have to make sure that we can upgrade and that we can bring everyone along for the journey. And these principles are really important for us because we don't know all the answers just yet for some of the things that are going to happen. Even better, we don't even know all the questions yet in some parts, so we're still learning and uncovering some of these elements. But these are the principles that we can hold to so that when we encounter these questions and we're actually starting to make decisions, that these can guide and make us make better decisions. Our desired outcomes. These are the outcomes we want to make sure that we ground our transformation in, so that all the work that we do delivers towards at least one, oftentimes multiple, of these outcomes. Because these are the outcomes that I heard and I summarised back that are going to make a difference to the community. Firstly, the term monolith came up so often as I talk to people about Moodle and describing the platform. And there's a strong desire to see it splitting up into some smaller parts, enable scaling better, enabling some release, and also enabling new technologies to come into the picture. We want to look at making the Moodle plugin development simpler, standardise it, make it more reliable, actually help provide some tools to make this a simpler process. We want to clean up the code base. It's really clear. The feedback on that was very, very clear. There's too much legacy stuff lying around. It's too hard to know what the right way is to doing things. Bringing on new developers when there's 5 or 6 different examples of how to do things, it makes it hard to work in. So we have to go and clean it up. One of the other big areas of feedback was also around our UI. But it's not my team's job to fix the UI. We've got product teams who are going to be investing in that. We've got a new design team that we heard about this morning that's going to be working and providing some of the tools for that, and our experienced designers all coming that together. But we do have a role to play to help modernise and give them the tools and the processes and make sure that these tools and systems are embedded in our processes so that it works well for everyone. And that's including adopting a new UI framework. We want to improve and simplify how Moodle gets deployed. We want to actually give better controls, simpler and understandable configuration so that it's easier to deploy and get Moodle running, but still leaving the granularity and the expertise needed. And lastly, we want to make Moodle plugins easier to manage, easier to deploy, giving some better controls about how plugins will work within the ecosystem. So now we've got a foundation of outcomes and principles that will actually give us a good direction on how we want to drive the change. What we want to do now is improve and give us a focus on how we want to go about and the what is needed to actually achieve this technical change. And for that, we're going to establish some architectural principles that will actually go and drive how we go and reimagine the architecture. There's 8 of them. This is the first slide. I'll take you through them quickly, but I'm not going to read all the content. The first one, the UI should be separate from the business logic. We want a really clear delineation between the UI and then all the calculations in the background, the business, the doing of the work. It should be lightly coupled. It'll be related, but it should be a lightly coupled, easy to test, makes the releases far more robust. We need to make sure our components are accessible only via API. And I want to be really clear, API, when I say and use the term API, I mean a language agnostic, a routable interface, not a PHP function per se. These will give us good boundaries, good interfaces that are actually going to become more robust, create more robust components. They're going to be easier to upgrade. They're going to be easier to test. We're going to create some stronger boundaries in our components. Components should be a logical set of APIs. They should make sense what comes together. I'm not going to try and define what is and isn't a component. That's largely up to the developers, but they should make logical sense of how things come together and what is and what isn't there. But it also means a component's got to have what it needs. If it has a dependency, then there needs to be a dependency via an API, or potentially via an orchestration configuration. But a component should provide what it needs. Components should be able to be built and released independently. We shouldn't have to have everything in a one big build that comes out once or twice a year. We should be able to split them up and release components independently, safely. We should be able to actually have focused, contained testing that we can then focus additionally on integration testing, not just some unit testing, not just some end-to-end testing, but we actually can bring in robust measures around integration testing, and that'll give us confidence when it comes to doing releases. Smaller builds, rapid releases. We start to actually be able to respond to feedback far quicker. Components should be able to be deployed into their own container. We shouldn't have to make assumptions about what components need. And if we start thinking about things around containers and we start thinking about being self-contained, well, then we're allowed to start looking at different technologies that can support orchestration. Components need to be managed. We need to be able to manage how components come in and out of the system, provide actual operations, manage the dependencies, make it safe, make it trustworthy around the upgrade process. Components shouldn't actually know where they're running. They shouldn't actually know that, oh, I'm running here and this one's over there and they're going to do some stuff and I can do some stuff. You can't assume whether you're on a server, where you're running, whether you have a file system or it's the same file system as another component. The component shouldn't know or need to know where they're running. The dependencies become explicit. And lastly, and not specifically an architectural principle, but a key design principle that we're making sure is in there from the beginning. These new components that I'm talking about have to coexist with the existing Moodle plugins. The current approach to flexibility does stem from having access to everything, and we don't want to take that away. We want to be able to actually have these things stand side by side and allow people, including ourselves, to iterate towards that, because change is going to take time. And the last thing I want to see happen is to create barriers to actually starting to move forward on this change. So now I'll take you through a little bit around the architecture. I was a bit worried what that picture was going to look like. It looks okay. You don't have to read all the text, but this is currently what it looks like. I've simplified some things here, but this is kind of what a component level architecture looks like in Moodle right now. You have our plugins, you've got your subsystems, and plugins talk to subsystems, subsystems talk to subsystems and other plugins. And really the difference between the two is nominal. They look actually very similar when you look actually at the structure of what makes a plugin and what makes a subsystem. They actually look pretty much the same underneath. And so the guide it's all about guidelines, the way that we delineate between the two. We have rules that plugins can't talk to other plugins. We have rules that subsystems are what you use to talk to other plugins and talk to other subsystems. We have rules about plugins can be delivered separately, but subsystems need to be delivered as part of the core release. But if we take our architectural principles and then we apply them and try to reimagine this, we end up with a picture that looks a little bit more like this. And this is an ideal future state. I want to firstly acknowledge the fact that maybe we might not actually achieve this as an ideal future state. We might get close. I'd love to see it all come together like this, but we may end up somewhere in between. But this ideal future state shows us a diagram where firstly you can see the UI clearly separated, built on APIs only, no direct engagement with the business logic, with database, an actual standard, robust interface. We see components only talking to other components via API. You can see that components are self-contained. They have what they need. They have their little box. They can see their own data. They have what they need. They don't need to care about anybody else. I will also point out, you might notice there's a little box in there. I've labelled it Core SDK. Because I know there's going to be a need for us to be providing libraries and functions to help support the development of these components. So there will be places for this. A simple example will be keeping the standard interface and approach to engaging with the database. We want people to be doing a standard approach to the database. We just don't want people mucking around in other people's data. So there will be some form of SDK in this land. You should also see that there's a picture where the components are managed. We can have components, they come into the system, they are managed and birthed into the system and controlled within the system, and then they can exit the system in a similar controlled fashion. But this is what it might look like in between. As we transition and move between the goals, we want to stand up a component next to the existing system. We want to put the right gateways and routes in place and actually have a new standalone component that represents and follows these principles, standing alongside the existing Moodle infrastructure. And there's two really key goals here that I want to highlight. And that'll be first establishing that new pattern of the UI and having it operate independently of the rest of the system. But it needs to coexist with the existing UI. So you can see there'll be some routing depending upon the paths. Where do they get the pieces of the UI from? And how do they come together? We want to make sure that we can create a self-contained component that is only going to interact with the system via an API. Because once we have something like that, then we'll have a pattern to follow and we can iterate on. But let's stand something up and show that we can actually coexist and have this new system operating alongside the old system. And a goal, for me, a bonus will be if I can have that component actually structured exactly the way that I want exemplar practice to be done, that we can have our standards and our policies and it's all actually beautiful. And we can perhaps move at some point where after enough iteration and enough enablement that we start to think about, right, well then as we want to bring new components into the system, this is the way they come in. We don't contribute to the old, we actually start contributing more to the new approach. All right, so now we've got what we want to achieve. Now we know our principles. Now I can start getting into that backlog. But I'll give myself a little bit of a process and a plan first. So firstly, governance. I did say at the start we wanted to do this transparently, and this is a key part of establishing why we want to establish the product advisory group. So we want to be able to share a roadmap of what's coming up, what we're working on now, what's coming up, what's next, start getting feedback on design, making sure that there's opportunities for the community to contribute, and ways that we can enable and start getting you ahead of the curve. But actually getting the governance in place is really key. And I'll have a link to join the product advisory group at the end of the presentation. But a process, it's going to have 3 main steps. Firstly, we're starting all this part already. We are preparing. We're cleaning up some of the code. We're actually starting to work on some designs around our API infrastructure and how the web services is going to work. Some of that work has already started. We're going to go and finish some of that work and actually start to push these designs out, get feedback, and start making progress on them. The tech transformation team will be the one leading that work, but we're really keen to get involvement and especially the feedback from not only HQ developers, but also the community. Step 2 sounds really simple. We just now start doing it. Actually start updating web services, putting proper RESTful web interfaces in place, and updating our UIs, adopting React as our UI framework, and updating key components within the UI for infrastructure. Initially, I want to focus on starting to do some test pieces, start to build confidence, and then move towards actually achieving that transition architecture picture I showed earlier, where we can actually have one component taken out and standing alone. The tech transformation team will start that work, and we will build those patterns that we want to enable others to follow. Get on board with HQ actually starting to follow this and working alongside the features that they're doing to help them as part of that, and then enabling the community as part of that as well. Lastly, reinforcing this. As soon as we can start to take benefit of separating out some of these components, let's start making some further changes that take advantage of these new APIs, this new componentization. And underpinning all that is a commitment about reducing technical debt. Across the way, every quarter, we will be picking up a number of work hours towards reducing our debt. I'm already compiling a list with the team to actually start to quantify and pull out our items to say, this is technical debt, let's prioritise it, let's start to work down it, let's share that with not only all of HQ but with the community and start getting people on board. Let's advocate for some focus and that we can all shift the needle, so to speak, and make meaningful change in our technical debt. From a timeline and a goals perspective, I know there will be lots and lots of questions about when. I'm just trying to give myself 2 simple goals right now. Right? Firstly, I'm the goal, not a commitment, but it's a strong goal that I'm using to motivate the team, is to actually, let's get React in place. Let's get the framework updated. Let's put the pieces in place so that we can use React as part of the Moodle framework in core by 5.2. That's what we're aiming to try and do. And we've started some of that work exploring that already. By the end of the year, I want to have that component standing on side. Maybe towards the end of the year, there might be a little bit more gaffer tape involved. So I'm not going to promise it's going to be ready in 5.3, but I want to make sure I can stand up, demonstrate, and show the community that we can stand a component. It can work like this, and this is going to be a pattern that we want to follow and build on in 2027. And as we start to reinforce, reap the benefits of some of these changes and see more and more momentum towards it. So this is the end of my presentation. Please get involved. I would love to be hearing and engaging with all of you as part of this. That QR code is going to take you to a link to join the product advisory group, and that's a place we're going to share. We're already starting to share some of the content that you've seen in this deck, and we should be releasing more of that very soon. And then we'll start to put more of our designs and more of our decisions and engagement up in there and having regular meetings. And I thought I would at least make sure it's not just about me. It's also being led by both Andrew and Adrian. They've been in the Moodle community for a substantial amount of time, and they're a very key part of the leadership team driving this transformation. So thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your attendance. I appreciate your attention. And if there's a few minutes for questions, that's great. If not, please feel free to grab me at any point during the conference and come and have a chat to me. I would love to learn more about how you use Moodle as a platform and help talk more about this transformation process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've got just one question here. Hi, I just want to say this is music to my ears. This is amazing. What I want to ask is, I come from UCL, I work for UCL, and there are some things I've already been researching on. There are many walls we have been hitting, especially on fixing UI. And I wanted to ask, how can we contribute and show you the research we've done and show you the changes we've done, how we can help you with this transformation. This is amazing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for the question about how to contribute towards the UI improvement process. For me, there's two parts to that. Firstly, some of the technology parts to that. It'd be great to engage with you about how you've been using it and incorporating that. The second part of it is actually how the product improves. And I'd be saying, that's fantastic. I'd be directing you to the other product directors who are actually overseeing some of those UI improvements, our experience design director as well, and actually starting to have conversations with them and participating to share that research that you've got there. That would be the best place to engage there. Thank you.
Hi, this is a techie question. So you've got a very tough task ahead. I mean, doing the digital transformation, converting it into microservices and all that. Have you considered using AI tools that exist? I mean, they're not fully automated. There are quite a few of them. Yep. Could probably help you speed up the process of this transformation. Look, I played around with some. There are different stages of evolution. But from one techie to the other, I thought I'll tell you, if you already don't know, that they do exist.
Absolutely. I'm very open to AI and using AI assistants to help drive and help improve that. One of the things I am very mindful of, though, technical debt. Some of our technical debt has made our code actually really hard to use AI tools with. So as part of this cleanup effort is actually starting to get ourselves in a position where we could reap some of those benefits. So absolutely, I am completely open to that, where it makes sense and where we can see those benefits.
Hi, Tim Hunt from the Open University. My reaction's rather different. I'm sitting here rather baffled. Now, for reasons of time, you kind of said you had to skip over your analysis of what you think the problem is, and how you got to the point that you think these are the right principles for Moodle, but I'm not yet understanding. I mean, some small bits are really good. Component system, UI component system, good idea, let's do that. Clean up the technical debt, absolutely. But the rest of it, I just don't get it yet, so please continue to explain. Thanks.
Sure. The comment around, I mean, without going into very specific areas, Tim, and I'm happy to take it also offline with you if you really want to dive into some of those details. This was all driven on the feedback. As I asked people and had their comments about what were the pain points, where were people's, where they saw the opportunities to improve, those outcomes that I talked about all came from direct comments of people saying, this is a pain, I wish this was easier. I aspire to a time when I can do X. So especially when I'm talking about some of the deployment comments that we were talking about, came up constantly about the deployment comments. One of the comments I actually heard was that sometimes Moodle can also only be as strong as its weakest admin. And so it relies heavily upon, for Moodle to be successful and for the great Moodle experience that I've heard so much about today, behind that, it almost sits on the shoulders of giants of admins who have got into that. I don't think that's a healthy reliance, and I think we can do better in terms of being able to make some things a bit easier so that these giants can actually go and actually have a bigger influence elsewhere within Moodle and within their roles. So that's probably a little bit, but I'm happy to dive more into that with you, Tim, and take you through some of those further conversations that I had.
Thank you. We'll have one last question, and then please bombard Travis afterwards.
Just to take a litmus test of the room, at this point, given on the information we've had, how many people here, put your hand up, if you are cautiously positive about that so far? Can I have some hands? Okay, and how many people are more cautiously negative at this point? Okay, well I think that's useful feedback for you there. Thank you. It was like what? 10 to 1, maybe 8 to 1. So
And that's fine. And this is a change, I have to stress, that we're not just rushing into it. We're not just going to start smashing things apart next month and all of a sudden everything's going to start breaking. This is a process that will iterate. Changes will happen in the right places where they make sense. And this is a change that will happen with collaboration, with feedback, but we will be moving forward in those lights. I will actually add one very quick answer to someone who asked a question 2 sessions ago. Are we going to be removing PHP as the language of choice? That is not part of the intent at all. However, what we would like to see, and with this componentized system and with robust interfaces, can some components be introduced into the system that aren't PHP based? And the answer in my hope would be yes. If we do these interfaces properly and we have these good boundaries, then there should be no reason that people can't contribute and develop plugins or components that are non-PHP. But in terms of the core system and saying, right, I'm mandating a different language, that's out. No, that's not the intent at all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of the last session. Thank you. Thank you, Travis.